And we are back with yet another edition of American Football News this week, starting September 16th. For those of you who have been paying attention, we are now well into the NCAA 2018 football season, as Week 3 concluded last week and Week 4 starts this Saturday. For those of you who follow the top 25, the results are in. And here they are. Alabama, number 1. This comes as no surprise, as this is Alabama's 4th week in a row coming in at number 1. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Clemson. Number 4, Ohio State. 5, the University of Oklahoma. 6, LSU. 7, Stanford. 8, Notre Dame. 9, Auburn. 10, Penn State. 11, the University of Washington. 12, West Virginia. 13, Virginia Tech. 14, Mississippi State. 15, Oklahoma State. 16, UCF. 17, TCU. 18, Wisconsin, who falls 10 spots from last week and effectively falls out of the top 10. Number 19, also a Big Ten team, Michigan. 20, Oregon. 21, Miami of Florida. 22, Texas A&M. 23, Boston College. 24, Michigan State University. And breaking into the top 25 for the first time this year, Brigham Young University. That's right, the Cougars of BYU break into the top 25. For those of you who are paying attention, you'll notice that 2 teams have fallen out of the top 25 that were in it last week. Boise State and Arizona State both suffered losses this past weekend that pushed them out of the top 25. Our upset of the week, we were just talking about it, Big Ten powerhouse Wisconsin, who was looking at a possible Big Ten championship and college football playoff spot, were humbled by the Cougars of BYU 24-21. This score does not indicate the actual game, however. If you watched this game, and it is my opinion, BYU pretty much handled the Badgers for 3 quarters. Last week's Game of the Week results, we had 2 of them. Number 6 LSU took on number 9 Auburn, and LSU was able to squeak past the Tigers in an instant classic, beating Auburn 22-21. Our other Game of the Week featured, at the time, number 17 Boise State taking on number 24 Oklahoma State. That was a close matchup on paper, but in reality, the Broncos were smashed 44-21. Our other Week 3 news, the biggest blowout game of the week was the Western Michigan Broncos taking on the Delaware State Hornets. The Broncos were able to shut out the Hornets by a score of 68-0. We can't make that up. The play of the week, I'm sure you have all seen because it's been all over YouTube, ESPN, and any other media device that you are on or currently follow. The North Texas Green Wave and their fake punt return left Arkansas stunned and confused as they ran for a quick touchdown. The punt returner never actually signaling for a fair catch. The Arkansas players actually, thinking that he did, started walking off the field before the play was done, and the Green Wave took advantage of this and ran it in for an easy touchdown. Other Week 3 news, if you are a fan of the Florida State Seminoles, your season is not going well. The Seminoles continued its unusual slow start, going 0-3 on the year so far, after dropping a shocker to the Syracuse Orangemen 30-7. A lot of people didn't see them losing to Syracuse, but Syracuse has some weapons on that team, especially a tight end, that may surprise a lot of people later on this year. Looking forward to the slate of games coming up for this weekend, we have a good game of the week to pay attention to. Number 1, Alabama squares up against a very good and very talented Texas A&M team who shows up at number 22 this week. Texas A&M took playoff favorite Clemson down to the wire a couple weeks ago, and Clemson able to hold on and pull out the win. But can the Aggies complete the upset this time against Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide, or will Roll Tide continue and their undefeated streak remain? For those of you who are fans of professional football, we now move on to the third week in the NFL. Another crazy week of surprises, disappointments, and shockers made up week 2 of the 2018 season. First, the Thursday night football match. Joe Flacco and the Ravens traveled to Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati to take on Andy Dalton and the Bengals, with the winner claiming the top spot in the AFC North. The Bengals jumped out to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter and never looked back, eventually winning the game 34-23 and claiming the top spot in the AFC North. Several great matchups this past week took place across the league, and a quick recap of a few of those games are now available. For the second week in a row, the NFL had a game end in a tie. This time, NFC North rivals, the Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packers, played to a 29-29 tie, making the race for number 1 in the North that much more interesting. Really, it's probably going to come down to which quarterback can stay healthy and continue their winning ways. Will it be Kirk Cousins and company and the Minnesota Vikings, or will Aaron Rodgers avoid a further injury to continue the Packers' quest for a playoff spot and a possible Super Bowl run? In a surprising and questionable move, former Buffalo Bills cornerback Vontae Davis, who also played for the Indianapolis Colts, retired at halftime during the Bills' loss to the LA Chargers 31-10. This raises a lot of questions across the league and sort of supports a culture of quitterism. I use that term loosely. Basically signifying that if you don't like the way things are going with your team, you can just quit. This is an attitude that I feel is very poor and very unprofessional. And for a player of the caliber of Vontae Davis to do this and deem it acceptable is unacceptable, and kind of hurts and tarnishes any sort of legacy or career that he has built up until this point. Continuing with our NFL news, the Cleveland Browns blew another game this week, missing 2 out of 4 field goals to narrowly avoid picking up their first W in over a year against Drew Brees and the Saints, losing 21-18. If you had the pleasure of watching this game, it was actually a fairly decent matchup, pitting the Browns' defense against Drew Brees' high-powered offense, and Brees and the Saints had a hard time figuring out the Cleveland Browns. It's a matter of time now before the Browns win a game. They are that good to at least win one this year. However, their kicking needs to improve. Had they been able to make at least one more of those field goals, they could have at the very least tied the game and or taken over the lead and picked up their first win. Staying with the AFC North, Pittsburgh still remains winless and without Le'Veon Bell after a beating to the Kansas City Chiefs 42-37. Frustration was being shown by star wide receiver Antonio Brown, who hinted at a trade after the game on social media but has since retracted his statement. Will Pittsburgh now give Le'Veon Bell what he wants, or plow ahead without the all-time All-Pro running back? Only time will tell. Super Bowl champion Philadelphia loses to red-hot Tampa Bay and Ryan Fitzpatrick as Fitzmagic throws 4 touchdowns in a 27-21 tie that really saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers explode offensively and potentially show you how good this Ryan Fitzpatrick can be. However, he's known for long cold streaks, and some weather if it's just a question of time before he hits one of those. The AFC Championship rematch from last year took place this past weekend with the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the New England Patriots. The Jags jumped on the Pats early and never gave up. Quarterback Blake Bortles threw 4 touchdowns total as the Jags win the rematch and humble Tom Brady and company 31-20. Moving on to Sunday Night Football, we saw another NFL rivalry add another great chapter to the series as the New York Jets took on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. While the Dallas offense struggled to keep anything going, the Cowboys' defense dominated Eli and the Giants, with the Cowboys coming out on top 20-13. Week 3 concluded 2 nights ago on Monday Night Football, featuring the Seattle Seahawks and the Chicago Bears, 2 teams that were 0-2, one team had to win. Khalil Mack and the Bears defense smothered Russell Wilson and the Hawks through 4 quarters, and Bears quarterback Trubisky did enough to ensure a Chicago victory. The Bears win in Chicago 24-17. Our Week 3 matchups are quite interesting, and we have 3 primetime matchups to pay attention to this week. Thursday Night Football, which kicks off tomorrow, will feature the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. That will be September 20th at 8:20, and it is this broadcaster's opinion that the Browns will win. The Jets aren't a particularly strong team, but did beat the Lions in Week 1. However, Cleveland's defense is the best in years, and it will pay off this Thursday. Our Sunday Night Football matchup is a matchup that some said at the beginning of the year would be quite interesting, but now will probably be a rout. The New England Patriots will take on the lowly Detroit Lions September 23rd at 8:20, and it is this broadcaster's opinion that Tom Brady and New England will easily beat the Lions. And Week 3 will conclude on Monday night, which features the red-hot Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. This takes place September 24th at 8:15, and it is my opinion that Pittsburgh will finally get their act together and get that elusive first win of the season. Well, that concludes today's broadcast. We certainly thank you for listening and for following my podcast. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or anything you'd like to add, please follow the links and emails provided at Spreaker.com, my Twitter.com, or Instagram. We thank you and look forward to broadcasting to you next week.